Man is more than a physical being. He's a spiritual being as well. And just as he has physical needs, he also has spiritual needs. The physical needs are more apparent to us than our spiritual needs. We have needs of food, water, shelter, air, light, and rest. If any of these are not satisfied, then we experience anxiety and stress. The longer we fail to satisfy our needs, the more anxious we get. Normally, we satisfy our hunger or thirst before we experience any great distress. When we're thirsty, we look for something to quench our thirst. But if we can't find something to satisfy our thirst, our sense of distress increases until finally there's only one thing on our mind: water. It's interesting to look into the Bible and find that our spiritual needs are similar to our physical needs. For example, in John chapter 6, 32 through 35, Jesus compared himself to bread, saying, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven, and giveth life unto the world. I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger." But just as we need physical food to sustain our physical life, we need Jesus Christ to sustain our spiritual life and fulfill our spiritual appetite in order to live spiritually. Likewise, for thirst, Jesus said in John chapter 6, verse 35, "He that believeth on me shall never thirst." And to the woman at the well in Samaria in John chapter 4, verse 14, Jesus said, "Whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life." Just as we have need of water to sustain physical life, we have need of Jesus Christ to quench our spiritual thirst for spiritual life. In Psalm chapter 61, verses 2 through 3, we see that we also have a need for spiritual shelter. It says, "Lead me to the rock that is higher than I, for thou hast been a shelter for me, and a strong tower from the enemy." In John chapter 1, verse 4, our need for spiritual light is satisfied by Jesus, who is the light of men. In Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, Jesus offers to satisfy another need, saying, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." And Genesis chapter 2, verse 7 tells us that the source for satisfying our spiritual need of air is God himself. It says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul." By comparing Jesus with every physical need we have, the Bible teaches us that Jesus is the sole provision for all of our needs. He's our spiritual food, water, shelter, light, air, and rest. By paralleling the spiritual needs with the physical needs, we can understand better how important it is to satisfy those needs. If we don't eat food, drink water, breathe air, take time to rest, find shelter, or have light, we eventually die. Likewise, if we don't satisfy our spiritual needs, we're dead. And as the Bible clearly shows, the only source for satisfying our spiritual needs is Jesus Christ. Although we are more aware of our physical needs than our spiritual needs, it's our spiritual needs that are most important. Why do I say that? Because if our body dies, it ceases to exist. But if we're spiritually dead, we end up in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, fully aware of our condition for eternity. The consequences of not fulfilling our spiritual needs results in an experience of eternal torment. Satisfying both physical and spiritual needs is important to your well-being. But if for some reason you had to make a choice between physical needs and spiritual needs, would you choose physical life and spiritual death, or spiritual life and physical death? Ultimately, the choice determines where you will spend eternity.